could call our meeting to order at 6:35 and roll call please.
Williams, Espinoza,
Here.
Schrader,
Here.
Cost,
Here.
Landers,
Here.
Rapp, Comitas.
Present. You could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have no public comment this evening. Okay, and so we will move to our budget presentation and discussion. I'm gonna move out of this.
That's fantastic, and you also have the slides right here if you want to take some notes. This is, all of this is in line with what we've been talking about, so none of this is a surprise, and everything is really unfolding the way that we've been planning to. So let's just kind of go, take a few minutes and we'll kind of just go through and we'll kind of, review the plan. So when you talk about this upcoming year, or the year that we're already in, always a good idea to recap last year and kind of make sure that we are where we thought we were and that we're going where we think we're going. So if we look at the revenue side of things last year, we had budgeted $16.1 million. The actual was about $80,000 less than that. So very close. Just to reiterate, my philosophy when I make a budget has always been to try to be as close as possible. A lot of people will, kind of the old adage in education is you kind of, underestimate your revenues and overestimate your expenses, and so your budget looks really bad, and then as you get through the year, hopefully it gets better and better. I tend not to do that. I try to just kind of be as spot on as you can the whole way through, and that usually works out pretty good. So on the expenditure side of things last year, we had budgeted 18.8, the actual was 18.8. Again, oddly enough, there's an $80,000 difference, which means that last year, when you look at the deficit and surplus, we had budgeted to overspend by 2.73 million. We actually overspent by 2.73 million. I would like to say that I'm that good. It was just really kind of blind luck the way all the expenses we had X million dollars worth of projects, and it just so happens that each one of the three kind of fell in the year just right. And so we'll take it. Now, one of the things that we want to be super cognizant of as we work through kind of unique revenues, unique expenditures, what does our structural deficit look like, or structural surplus? And so if we back out the facility projects last year, if you look at that 2.73 million, the actual unique projects that we spent was 2.58 million. So if you're going to look at kind of like what does a structural deficit look like, pretty balanced, 150,000 in the whole. So we always take a look at this 289 index. It's all funds that we have at our disposal. And as we look at that, and we really want to pay attention to what the trend looks like over time. So 8.9, 8.5, 9.1. We had that peak last year when we had our bond sales, and then back down to 8.2. So again, if you look at that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 year period, really a pretty stable fund balance over that time. And if you have any questions at any point in time, just holler. Now, if we look at this year's revenues, we're budgeting at 19.8. Last year's actual was 16. You're like, whoa, that's looks like a lot of new money. Okay, so let's unpack that for just a minute. Why our revenue is going to go up by $3.7 million? If you'll recall, when we did our solar project, we had 1.9 million in grant monies. Okay, to date, we haven't received a dollar. This fiscal year, we should receive about 900,000 in grant funds. Okay. Also, you combine that with the fact that we've been on a 2-year working cash bond cycle, and if we continue that, and again, we'll talk about that again later in the meeting, I've sent some updates on that and what kind of all that looks like. Then that bond sale would be February or so, and again, that would account for that increase in revenues. If you look on the expenditure side, last year's actual was 18.8, this year's budget is 18.8, and so basically about the same expenditure, but it will be in kind of a different, in some different things, and we'll get to kind of, we'll unpack that in just a minute. So if you look at annually, are we putting money in the bank? Are we overspending? Because we're continuing to kind of ping pong back and forth. And so a couple years ago, we put 1.77 million in the bank. Last year, we took out 2.7. This year, we're gonna put in $1 million. And so when you balance all of that out over time, is that my?
It's Holly. She's called Jackie though.
Okay. Hey, Holly.
Oh, sorry, I just got done.
No, no, you're fine. Do you want me to call you back on the speaker, or do you just want to stay on my phone?
I can stay on your phone as long as that's okay with you.
Yep. All right, can you hear me, Holly?
I can.
All right, fantastic. So we're walking through the budget right now. So
Okay.
so when you look over that several years and you balance it out, it's balanced, right? Which is obviously a positive thing. So then when you look at our Mendota index, looking at putting $1 million in the bank this year, again, right in line with keeping it pretty level. A high of 9.1, a low, or a high of 10.9, a low of 8.2, and kind of fluctuating in between those two numbers.
What did you take into account in this index? Anything regarding like the bonds or anything like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So there's no assumptions in that number.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And so then let's unpack that, kind of that structural deficit a little bit this year, right? So budgeted surplus of $1 million, and when we look at some of the unique revenues and projects, so we're in the kind of the project cycle of finishing paying for this summer's projects. Actually, we had a few bills from the solar, which was technically supposed to be the summer before, so we've got some of those in this year's budget. And then we've already agreed to getting the HVAC taken care of at Northbrook and Blackstone. And so, assuming that there'll be about 50% of that project being paid in this year as well. And then like Teresa was just talking about, then on the revenue side of things, we have unique revenues of grants and bonds. And so we try to back all of that out so we can take a look at what that structural deficit is. And again, very manageable. Looking at a structural deficit of about $400,000. Did that answer your question, Teresa?
Mm-hmm.
So, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to get out of the conversation without having a quick conversation and recognition on the revenue side of things.
Yeah.
Can you put mute on your end real quick?
Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry.
On the revenue side of things for this year, it's really nice that these revenues are up. But when you back out our bonds and our grants, the revenues aren't up a ton from last year, okay?
What is that number?
Okay, so
Yeah.
of the 3.7 million,
Mm-hmm.
now this is, the assumption here is that we're staying with our 2-year working cash bond cycle and no tax increase, okay?
So levy, same.
So the levy would be the same, and the bond sales would not increase the tax rate either, okay? which is kind of what we've been doing.
And what was your assumption for EDF in that number then?
We're up like 13,000 or something.
Okay.
It's minimal.
What did you ask?
Evidence-based funding, the
Okay.
state funding.
Yeah,
Oh,
so,
it's okay.
yeah, so state funding, we get just shy of $4 million from the state. Our programs are 16 million, and so you can see that we don't get a ton of money from the state, about 25%. And so, so if you back out the 2.6 in bond sales and the 900,000 in grant monies, that's 3.5 million. So really, the natural growth that we're looking at here is really only about $250,000.
Can you address briefly? I know we had kind of talked a little bit about catching up a little on the levy side of like the.
Yep.
But not doing that versus doing the working cash bond. Can you just like, cause I know that that's an area where we often like don't have full understanding around the difference.
Yep, and the last discussion item on the agenda, is all about that, future planning, levy and bonding.
good.
And is that all right if we do that now?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I wanna make sure we cover it
Yep.
though.
Yep, for sure. No, it's a super important conversation, so I definitely want to give it time now, because that way we've got months to kind of process and ask questions and make sure that everybody's in a good spot on what that path is. No, for sure. On this revenue, I made a separate chart here on our CPPRG funds, and that's super impactful for us. We were going along about 5 years ago, and we were getting about $600,000, and then 3 years ago that spiked, and 2 years ago we actually went from 600,000 to over 2 million, and that's state money, and everybody across the state was like, "This is fantastic." And then the state said, "Oh, we made miscalculations. We were putting money in the wrong bucket," and so then that, as you can see, then that started dropping back over time. That's about as good of an explanation as anybody's got.
So, without knowing for sure, is it lower in 25 than it was in 21, like?
No,
Or- okay.
so in, that's kind of why I kind of tried to put in kind of like a trend line
Yeah.
there. And so really, I wanted to show is that if we wouldn't have had that huge spike for those couple of years, with natural growth, this year's number, which is in the neighborhood of 900,000. That's about where we probably would have been anyway, and probably should be. It's just that we were overpaid about $2 or $2.5 million over the course of 3 years, and Springfield is saying that they've already taken all the money back that they're going to, and so that next year's number should be up a little bit. And so, so that was a revenue stream that really got increased and escalated really for unknown reasons, and it was basically because the Department of Revenue made a couple series of mistakes. So, very, very interesting. So. But again, I think the big takeaway is that we've kind of had this, there we go. We've kind of had this plan in place, that we've been able to do all these great things, be able to add supports, take care of facilities, and have this nice planned path in place where we keep our fund balance in the same general neighborhood, and so far that's unfolded just like we planned. So, I think that's super good.
I'm assuming that in the revenue, or in the expenditure side, we have our increase associated with our agreement, our teachers union agreement is in there, all those assumptions are there with like admin,
Yes, ma'am.
and then the hourly wage increase, all that kind of stuff is in there.
And the $450,000 increase in health insurance as well.
So can you go back to that difference in expenditure last year to this year? I think you had that as one of your slides, didn't you?
Right there.
So So how is it that that number looks like that, but we do have so many of those changes?
Yeah, great question. So this is total expenditures, which is going to include a lot of, which is gonna include all of our, I'm gonna call them unique facility projects. Things like, putting in bleachers and secured entryways and air conditioning and HVAC work and all of that, right? And so we incurred more of that last year than we anticipate in this year that we're in now. And so the amount that we're spending on project, if you're gonna compare the 2 years, and this is 24 and this is 25, we spent more in 24 on unique projects than we did in 25. And so that difference then
So do we
is-
have the
is the-
functional, you called it functional or operational number?
structural, yep.
Structural. Do we have
Mhm.
that number last year, like this number without the special projects in it?
Yep, and so when we look at what I'm calling our structural deficit,
Yeah,
last year, kinda when you back out all of the projects and just take a look at what does it cost if you're not doing anything unique. Are you putting in money in the bank? Are you deficit spending? What's going on? Last year, when we look at the actual numbers, we did have a little structural deficit, but on a $16 million budget, 150,000, I don't think that's overly concerning. You wanna see if there's any kind of trend with that. If it's $150,000 this year, or last year, but this year we're planning on being $1 million, then there are huge red flags that we're really trending hard in a wrong direction. And so again, when you look at the budget of things for this year in FY25, and you look at that structural piece, again, it's a deficit, but it's only projected to be in the 400,000 range. So
it is a significant jump, but.
it is. It's definitely, it's not trending the right way, but it's not trending the wrong way, in an alarming.
It's not
in an
unexpected,
alarming
I
way.
guess, cause we knew the $400,000
Yep.
health insurance expense was coming.
So that's kind of in that.
Right, that's
Correct.
basically what
Yeah.
it is.
Correct.
Is there anything that's not included in the budget, or the budget is everything? Okay,
Second thing you said.
okay, just making sure.
Yep, of
Because the way
course.
she was asking, I was just like, well,
Yep.
then what, is there anything that's not?
Yep. No.
I just wanna,
Yeah,
this is more our real numbers, I
Yep.
feel like, cause the
Yep.
other stuff is kind of like our
Is
extra
this
spending, our
minus
play
that,
money,
maybe
right?
like-
Like our good,
Yeah.
our fun project money, as
Yeah.
opposed to like our daily operations of school.
but I
Yeah.
like seeing it that way too, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, and it's important to unpack it, kind of strip that away. But looking at it, stripping all of this away, means that we would never use any of our working cash bond
Right.
sales
Right.
to help offset some of our normal costs, and I don't think that's realistic
No.
either. So I think that the truth is kind of somewhere in the middle.
But the reality is, this structural deficit number is not like a temporary situation.
Correct.
Because that health
Correct.
insurance number isn't magically gonna go down by $400,000 next year. So it is something to be,
Yep,
Really
super
where
cognizant
we're at.
of, yep.
yeah.
And that's why we're talking about it, we need to make sure that we keep it in our forethought. Yep.
So I guess knowing that, and we're gonna talk about this more later, but while we're on the subject, I wanna just put the little, like, post-it note there. Knowing that that is a continuing thing and not a one-time, we had to fix this, or we had to do this one-time thing, this is an ongoing expense. Probably forever, pretty close to forever, like, it's gonna be some significant changes for us to be able to come down that much on our health insurance costs.
In a perfect world, how many years clean were we until we could join in COLA?
3, right?
And we're at,
If we had a really good year this year, we could join next year.
so that could at least cut that number in half.
I think it could really stabilize things.
Yeah, we may not see like a huge cost savings necessarily,
But
but
it won't
hopefully
keep going.
turning it the other way and not going up. But I guess what I'm saying is, when we talk about levies, just think about the fact that a levy, to me, a levy is more permanent than a bond, right? It's something that
Yep.
is ongoing, it doesn't go backwards, it's that, and then it's that plus whatever it is the following year. If the cost of doing business, so to speak, is higher, and it's gonna be higher because of things outside of our control, not because of extra spending, not because of special projects, but because that's how much it costs to have benefits for our staff.
And to keep up with the salaries.
Right, and all the expenses that go along with it. I just wanna us to remember that when we get to that levy number, that if we aren't keeping the two in line with one another, that's where eventually things could get hairy.
For sure. I completely agree. And so just, okay, I'll save that till later. Okay, yeah, for sure. No, I couldn't agree more.
Save the post-it note in your brain.
It's all on the board.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, any other questions? Yeah, this is really good, so thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm not gonna hurt you. Okay, so we just need a motion for adjourning the budget. Is this considered a hearing?
Mm-hmm.
Budget hearing, so we can move into our regular meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay, just clarifying.
To adjourn the budget presentation discussion.
For a second,
Second.
and roll call.
Schrader,
Yes.
Espinoza,
Yes.
Koss,
Yes.
Landers,
Yes.
Cumitas,
Yes.
Rapp.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion to call to order our regular meeting, please.
Make a motion to call to order the regular agenda.
Second,
I'll second.
and roll call.
Schrader,
Yes.
Koss,
Yes.
Espinoza,
Yes.
Rapp,
Yes.
Landers,
Yes.
Cumitas.
Yes. We'll skip over the pledge, we just did that a couple minutes ago. Could we have a motion to approve the regular meeting agenda, please?
Make a motion to approve the regular meeting agenda as presented.
And a second,
Second.
and roll call.
Cumitas,
Yes.
Landers,
Yes.
Koss,
Yes.
Rapp,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Espinoza.
Yes.
We don't have any public comment again this evening, so moving on, could we have a motion to approve consent agenda, please?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda. 5.1, disposition of minutes for July, 5.2, payment of bills for July, 5.3.
And
district-
August.
And August, yeah, that's right, we were here. 5.3, district treasurer's report, 5.4, interest and activity fund report, cafeteria report, and 5.5, personnel report.
In a second,
Second.
and roll call.
Schrader,
Yes.
Koss, Landers,
Yes.
Rapp,
Yes.
Espinoza,
Yes.
Cumitas.
Yes. Item 6.1, FOIA requests.
We and all other school districts have had quite a few FOIA requests from the Illinois Valley Times. A variety of things that a lot of them were just sending them links to the school report card, because that's where they are. So handling those as they come in.
Thank you. And 6.2, your report.
Yeah, just a couple of reminders. Here in the fall, we'll have a rotation of administrator presentations, and I'm sure that when Mr. Pierce is here, he'll be talking a lot about not only our fall Fast Bridge numbers, but then also our last spring's IAR scores. Our IAR scores are the ones that we don't use that data nearly as much as we do our Fast Bridge scores, but they're the ones that are in the school report cards, so everybody sees them, so you definitely have to pay attention to them. Our IAR scores from last spring were up considerably, and so we're very excited about seeing all of that data trend in a positive direction. Just really gives some credence to all of the different initiatives that we're putting in place, and yeah, super happy about that for sure. And then also a reminder that with the spring board elections, just to remind everybody that the filing dates are different this year. And so if you have any questions, just let the district office or the regional office or the county elections know, and they can answer whatever questions you need.
Petitions are open right now.
Petitions are open right now. For sure. Yep, that's all I had.
Thank you, sir. 6.3, we did not have any board committees or reports. And moving on to item 7.1. I feel like 7.1 maybe we should have after 8.3.
Okay.
I would like to finish that discussion before we do that, so could we have a motion to move 7.1 to become 8.4?
I move to, move, action item 7.1 to after discussion item 8.3 as 8.4.
And second? And roll call.
Camidas?
Yes.
Rapp?
Yes.
Landers?
Yes.
Cos?
Yeah.
Schrader?
Yes.
Spinoza?
Yes.
Okay, so item 7.2, new teacher contracts. Do you wanna explain that?
Yeah, so, every year our new teachers have contracts that are put in front of the board, and so, every year our new teachers, we just have the board ratify those teacher contracts.
So our motion is just to approve them as presented.
Correct.
And they're in the board
Packet.
packet. Okay. We can have that motion, please.
Is there anything different from the last time?
No, actually, this is, a holdover from the August meeting that was missed. All of this was just in your August packet and brought forward, so that could get done.
What you mean from like last year?
Same process, different names, cause new people. Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the new teachers' contracts as presented.
Second? Second. And roll call.
Cos?
Yes.
Schrader?
Yes.
Spinoza?
Yes.
Landers?
Yes.
Rapp?
Yes.
Camidas?
Yes. 7.3 is our SIP waiver. This is our school improvement to a full day from the normal 5-hour or 3-hour day. This has to be filed with the original Office of Education, is that correct?
And ISBE.
Okay. Any questions on that?
Say that again for me, please.
Yeah, so, October 11th, we had the unique opportunity to have, some teacher training in, and,
Okay,
yep.
just making sure.
Yep, and so that, instead of it being a regular attendance day with students, it's actually gonna be a full day of teacher training. And the reason why we chose that day, cause it corresponds with, a day that the high school has teacher training. So it's one of those, it would have been normally on the calendar as a day where we're in session, but they're not, and so,
It was a good day.
yeah, it was a great day, for sure.
Okay, could we have a motion for item 7.3 SIP waiver?
I move to approve the SIP waiver as presented.
And a second? And roll call.
Espinoza?
Yes.
Schrader?
Yes.
Cos?
Yes.
Camidas?
Yes.
Rapp?
Yes.
Landers?
Yes.
Item 7.4 revised calendar. Is that just the only revision taking into account the SIP day?
You got it.
Okay. So if we could have a motion to accept the new revised calendar.
Go ahead.
Make a motion to approve the revised calendar as presented.
And a second?
Second.
And roll call.
Camidas?
Yes.
Espinoza?
Yes.
Schrader?
Yes.
Rapp?
Yes.
Landers?
Yes.
Cos?
Yes.
And I'm assuming that'll go out to parents then right away?
Actually, we've already done, an information on that. We sent out a reminder, I don't know, maybe 10 days ago that said, hey, these are 4 or 5 dates that, are a little bit different than kind of what you're expecting. One of them is, we've got a 2:30 dismissal that coincides with the high school's homecoming, this date, and then the 3 days before Christmas break are 1:30 dismissals. And so we already sent that out to parents saying, hey, make sure that, that you're looking at the calendar, and those these aren't particular ones that you're gonna be thinking of, so make sure you've got these written down.
Okay. Thank you. Item 7.5, reimbursement resolution.
Yeah, so this is interesting. Again, and it's in the conversation of, the spring of '23, we had bond sales to cover facility issues. You know, the conversations about in late winter, spring of '25, doing the same with the, you know, 1.9 million that we have on the books for next summer, and how, you know, we're gonna get that covered. So a reimbursement resolution, it doesn't hold you to doing anything. However, if we adopt that now, then any facility dollars that we spend between now and we actually sell the bonds, then we can, in an accounting world, use the bond sale proceeds to pay those bills. And when you sell bonds and you use it exclusively for facilities, you get a better interest rate. And so this does not hold the board to selling bonds or selling them in any amount, but what it does do is allows us to get a better interest rate if and when we go to do that in the next 6 months or whatever.
So all it's doing is saying the allocation of any potential bonds would be used for facilities so that impacts the finance rate.
Correct.
So we would still have all the necessary action regarding the sale of the bond.
Oh my goodness, yes.
It would just be that this is allocating the reimbursement portion ahead of time.
Yep, we're just trying to be as proactive as possible so that if that eventuality comes to pass, that we get the best interest rate possible.
And is there a reason you have to declare this now, or you can't declare it at the time of sale?
So
or-
you can't, so once, so if you declare it at the time of sale, a reimbursement resolution like this only allows you to go back 90 days in time
Okay.
and capture those expenditures. And so if we pass it now, not only will it allow us to go back in time 90 days from this date to recapture the bills that we've paid over the last 3 months, but then it will also capture everything between now and any possible bond sales.
And when does this, resolution expire, or does it expire?
It does not, as far as I'm aware. That's a good question.
But it's only applying to the next bond sale,
Correct.
Oh, okay,
so it's not like forevermore.
gotcha, okay.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions on that one? No? Okay, we can have a motion for 7.4.
I move to approve the reimbursement resolution as presented.
A second.
Second.
And roll call.
Schrader?
Yes.
Spinoza?
Yes.
Cost?
Yes.
Landers?
Yes.
Rapp?
yes,
Cumidas?
Yes. So the IASBO P cards.
Yeah, the P cards. So, we've had some issues with our kind of traditional bank credit cards and fraud, and so, in researching P cards through IASBO, it's basically a form of a credit card, but it's much more secured. And so, we probably still will have a credit card moving forward, but the vast majority of our transactions will actually be kind of through more secure channels. And IASBO is the Illinois Association of School Business Officials. So, it's, school business officials are in larger districts, the administrators who just do finance. And they have their own wizard council, like the superintendents do and the school board members do and principals do. So
They're part of the Triple I.
they are one of the I's in Triple I, yes.
I know, like, just personally looking at a lot of information lately, there's some questions around the benefits of operating more on POs versus P cards. Because a PO requires there to be kind of approval process ahead of a purchase, right? And in some cases, if the amount's a certain amount or above, then you're looking at trying to do like these bids and some of the things with purchasing power and all of that, as opposed to just transactional purchasing, which you're not really sure, cause you're not really tracking, like, did we purchase the same type of thing 11 times? Could we have done a PO and purchased, like, is that something we could look at some point, like maybe over the summer or something we're looking at?
So we do POs for all our credit card purchases.
Okay. But it's just that it's still transactional based, like we aren't necessarily now, like, examining for potential.
I know Maria does under her special ed. Yeah, I think she's the only one that does that.
Okay. There's just a lot of potential buying power. If you can.
We also do that in all of our maintenance custodial conversations. We're in a cooperative where the vast majority of our, not to say the vast majority, a majority of our sales are done through that. And that allows us to not only get great pricing, but also have great controls over what we buy and how.
But you're maybe saying from like my former teacher experience, like if like a bunch of teachers are all ordering something from the same place or same items, and then you have that sitting on your desk and you approve the process, then you
Right.
can order one and get
Right,
better rates.
or maybe the same item or a similar item from 7 different vendors, whereas if you kind of can
Consolidate.
try to do that, right, and then you can negotiate sometimes with the vendor on, okay, if we're gonna order 7 times as
But that
much,
wouldn't,
but.
that's like what you're suggesting with that, like that wouldn't eliminate like any ability to still purchase as needed, it'd just be
More purpose, like, there has to be a little bit more intent and a little more time behind a purchase, but if we're already doing a PO for most of our, or for all of our credit card purchases, it seems like there's already at least a step in there, but
And even
perhaps.
for charges and stuff too, charges to places.
I would have to think about that, yeah.
Okay, cool, I just think if we're doing it in a couple of places, that's great, maybe we can even look at the summer, like potential savings if we look at doing it even a little more.
Definitely.
Cool. So do you need, cause it's on here but not on here, so I make sure.
We do.
Do you have anybody that plays the game with, I don't know, maybe it's credit cards and points, and if you're purchasing from, you know, this month you get 5% cash back on your card, and this month if you go buy stuff from here, it's 3%. Do we have anybody that works that angle to help?
Finds the deals, is what you're saying?
I guess, essentially, no.
No, I mean, not that I'm aware of, I know that we have certain vendors that we go through where we accumulate points and we can get free things, and so, but I think that's more vendor based, right, than.
Credit card usage.
Oh, it is credit card usage, oh, okay, so we do have points.
Cause we've had
Not the-
a credit card vendor, like we haven't, like you're saying, like should we maybe
Not
go
the
with
credit-
Chase 1 week and then, or 1
No,
month? Okay.
my dad's a guru with those things, but did you buy your groceries only at Walmart online this month, Amanda? Because you're gonna get an extra % back, and now that's more cash flow for other things, and then he'll remind me, oh, did you buy all your gas over here? It's double the, % back, and just, again, little things of ways to pull money in, I guess.
Oh, we wonder why it started squeaking.
Do you think that all those are applicable to like a nonprofit business though? The
I
same way they
think a
would
lot
be
of it
for-
probably more than we think with all the random little purchases you do, but.
But aren't those month by month? I mean, I know with my credit card, it's like, okay, this month
Yeah.
if you do this, you get this, but next month it'll be
Right,
something
and
else.
it's kind of along the same lines too, I think Holy Cross does a script, is that what it's called, where
Yeah,
it's
that's a thing.
maybe similar, where our buying power has us
Script's
as
more of a
business.
fundraiser.
Yeah. Selling gift cards and getting a percentage of them.
Yeah.
Sort of, just kind of along that, maybe in the background, I'm maybe not explaining it very
No,
well.
I get
No,
what, I
yeah,
get what you're
I
saying.
get it. But you almost need somebody like that would be their full-time job to like
Oh my goodness.
know
Oh
those,
my
know the
God.
deals and remind and if they, yeah, that'd be a lot. So with the P card, program or whatever it is, like, is this like a certain amount of cards that we, or like, how many cards are we talking?
I was
How
thinking
many
one per
gifts
building.
cards? Okay, one per building.
So what is the summary of difference between today's way of doing business and moving to that one, I guess?
Using P cards will allow me to know who did the transaction. Right now, when I get the credit card statement, I have to, who did it?
Okay. Especially when it's like,
Well, we do Amazon Pay by invoice, so that's not
Oh,
there
okay.
anymore.
Very good. Any other questions?
I've used P card before, like I actually had a P card when I was a teacher before, and I really liked the system. I also had to do POs and stuff, but I really liked it.
I just did a quick search on the Illinois Expo. I'm sure you saw all this, but there's potential rebates that we wouldn't otherwise be able to get. So there's some,
There is
some additional added benefits to being part of the larger plans. Okay, cool. Any questions? Okay. Motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the, ISBO credit cards plan.
Roll call.
Rapp,
Yes.
Landers,
Yes.
Cumidas,
Yes.
Cos,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Espinoza.
Yes.
Alright, moving into our discussion items. 8.1 is the Triple I Conference.
Yeah, so, in November, the weekend before Thanksgiving, is, our Triple I conference every year. This year's no exception, and so just want to kind of get a lay of the land, see, when you would like to have me set up a board dinner, then everything kind of works around that, off of that, and so, and then that way I can, set up what different things look like. Also, if you see any of the Friday workshops that strike your fancy,
Okay,
all
what
kinds-
times are these?
all kinds of, these are definitely unique
Yeah.
workshops.
I'm a nerd, I nerd out on those.
I know. Don't tell anyone.
Where there's an extra cost,
No, I said I nerd out, we go work on
Yeah,
that
so
side.
she wanted to be my
I like
partner.
going to all the extra workshops.
yeah, then let me know sooner rather than later, because some of them, stack up and get sold out.
Are they already open?
They
or-
should be listed on the website,
Okay.
what they are, and whether they're full day or half day.
I made Brad pick my
Oh.
I remember I sent you a don't do on board night dinner. Do you remember?
Yep.
Remember what day I told you not to do it on? I can go back through all messages. I had a conflict one of the nights.
Will it be the same, or this year?
No, I just
Oh.
sent him a message a little bit ago about something
Oh,
that I
for
would have,
this year.
yeah, since we hadn't really like firmed up which day of the conference we were gonna do ours on, I had requested it not be on one of the days, but I have something else. I
Does
have to
it,
do on.
is there, like, a company or anybody that's like doing a dinner with us this year, or?
Yep,
Okay.
and it can be whichever day.
Oh, okay.
There we go. So we have it on Thursday or Saturday, not Friday.
We can have, it'll be whenever the
So just
board tells me to
Saturday.
make it.
I would say Saturday for that.
Saturday.
Cause I won't be there Thursday.
Saturday night.
I will be there. It's my son's birthday.
Aww.
Well, it's not like a big birthday. Yes, it
You can bring
He's
him.
the baby.
He can come. I'm sure he would love to have dinner with us.
I'm sure.
We had a magician, remember?
I think we should go back to it.
No, but
I know again, I still think about that.
I know.
How did he do that?
Unbelievable. I didn't like it.
Yeah, that was something else. And yes, Amanda, that's fine. So our snacks for the evening are courtesy of our cafeteria manager, Carrie. And, the,
8.1.
the wraps, are actually something that normally gets served in our cafeteria. So, everybody please, have some.
I was told the
So-
pasta was actually good today, so pass it on.
Carrie does a great job.
What information do you just want people to be communicating with you online then about arrival dates and
If-
workshops and
Yeah, if you're,
conflicts?
if you're
But you're
something
coming for
other
part
than
of it
coming in
then?
Thursday,
Are you
maybe,
coming for part of it though, the conference? Or you don't know yet?
I'm not sure.
right now, everybody is signed up to be in Thursday night, out Sunday morning. If you're something other than that, then let me know, so I can adjust your hotel schedule.
Everybody, but we didn't pick up for Garrett, right?
I'm Friday,
Not Garrett, correct. Garrett is not signed up.
I'm
That's-
Friday.
it's-
which is what is on the document from Mark shared.
Okay, make sure.
You're kind of a question mark still. Okay.
Okay, and so then, when would you like for me to schedule?
Well, does anybody else have a conflict for Saturday? We're not 100% sure that Jenny's going. Very sick with that one. Calendar.
Okay, so board dinner is Saturday?
It's blues and I'll call it the moon one night.
Yes, so then I will take care of all the rest of that. And I will make sure that my anniversary dinner is Friday night.
You could be my guest to come to my dinner.
We go to the same place every year.
Don't know how much my wife will enjoy.
Come on, we're going to another free dinner. This is super fun.
Yep, I'll take care of all that.
Okay, so yeah, when we get all that stuff figured out, because we can always be flexible at times going earlier or later or whatever around the other things, so if there's other things you wanna do, we don't overlap Andy's cruise or anything.
She
Yep.
didn't do a cruise this year. You didn't do a cruise this past.
No, you guys booked something else, right?
Something else fun and free.
Right? Okay, so, be in communication, let Brad know.
Yep.
Okay. Press policy 116. First reading.
First reading, just lots of, the majority of it's little cleanup things. I would say of most significance, there was a little bit of a change in Title IX laws and the policies reflect that, which are all common sense things. Nothing that would actually impact the way we do business.
Okay, so we will see that again next meeting.
Correct.
All right, let's have our discussion on the levy and bonding.
Yeah, so just to circle back around on what that looks like, so to recap on the levy is what we do in December, and it's how the local property tax rate gets set for the following year. The bonding is a specific raising of cash by selling bonds. It's a one-time revenue. Okay. And then, like most debt, then you take the next 2 years and pay it off.
How many years can we pay back one bond on average?
So currently, as we sit here in 24, I believe our last bond is set to be paid off in 28.
And that, the last one being the one we did in 2023?
Correct.
Okay, so about.
Correct.
And.
Yep. So the tax levy, prior to last year, we were at $2.70, a tax rate of $2.70. And the conversation was, as we look at all of our neighbors and like schools, their tax rates are much greater than ours. The lowest would be LaSalle and Peru, and we were at 270 and they're in the 320s. So you can imagine that 50 plus cents makes it that much more difficult to be able to run quality programs for all of our kids. And so the conversation was, well, we should increase that rate. We don't need to be them, but let's have a concerted effort to try to increase this over the next few years. And the conversation was, let's try to wind up in the neighborhood of $3. That would at least get us kind of half the distance between us and the lowest. Some elementary districts in our county are, in the high threes, 370, 380. And so just having that conversation, making that concerted effort, and then last December when we agreed to go from 270 to 280. And so part of the conversation is, instead of having that rate creep up over time through the levy process, one conversation then is to do it through the bond process. There are kind of pros and cons with that. As the levy gets higher and higher, then it becomes kind of more difficult to raise that money without a referendum. Okay. And so if we decided that we were going to go to $3.50, say, and have a significant jump, you would want to do that through the referendum process, right? But that's really not the conversation that what we're trying to do. We're just trying to do this incrementally, and so.
Can you explain to me why your recommendation is to do the dime and the 2 working cash cycles as opposed to through the levy where we are trying to get closer to that 3?
So, I think that it is, I want to say cleaner through the bond process, because you get all the revenue all at once, and it's really clear on you're doing this action, you get this money, and it's also not something that it's something that it's very easy to use that money, and so as we pay off facility projects, if we want to start using it for other things, we can do that, and so also, go ahead.
I was just saying, so now to clarify on that, like with the resolution that we did tonight, like for facilities or whatever type projects, that's kind of what we were talking about. Can you just also use it for something else, or then that, like, we just agreed to only use it for that?
The resolution allows us to capture as much expenditure as possible and earmark it with a bond. And so, if we do our normal bond rotation and don't have the tax rate increase through the bond process, if we don't capture that dime through the bond process, then we'll be able to sell bonds and have that one-time revenue of about $2.6 million. Whereas if we increase a dime, then that $2.6 million goes to $4 million.
So, if the goal overall is to bring our tax rate eventually more in line, which is a more accurate, because I guess bonding is like an over and above way of capturing revenue as opposed to like your allocation of revenue through the normal tax stream, right?
Would agree with that.
So if our normal cost of business, our functional cost of doing business aside of large projects is X, and our current tax rate plus all of our other revenue sources is
Yep.
So that $400,000. Is that really the best, most assured way? Or should we be at least, and I'm not saying one or the other, I'm trying to maybe think about like both. Like maybe we went up a dime last year, maybe if we went up, you know, or even 5.
Or if
like,
you do 5 cents
like
on
5
each.
cents, is that a more accurate functional cost of doing business, functional revenue source, and then the bonding is for the added? I just feel like it's more predictable, it's more, like, it doesn't matter, it's not market dependent like bonding would be.
What was the additional that we got in with that levy increase 2 years ago? I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay, so an increase of a dime on the levy means that the next tax year, you're gonna get about $300,000 with that dime. But the point of that is, it's not, that $300,000 is, you don't get it one time. You get it every year moving forward.
It's
Guaranteed.
it just resets the minimum bar every year, and then you can either stay there or go higher, but you don't go down.
Unless you made a conscious effort to.
Right, which, unless the cost of doing business were to significantly go down, which is currently going the other way, by a lot. But I guess just bonding, I don't know, I think of it kind of like, almost like the tax
Getting a
levy,
bonus
aside
versus
from
getting
our
a
other
raise.
revenues, are kind of like our income, like our job, right? And then we did a side job, or we borrowed a loan, or we did something
Yep.
to go on this great trip, or this whatever, is kind of like our project money.
Yep.
I almost feel like it's cleaner to keep the two separate, and if it costs, we know it's going to cost us this amount of money to do business moving forward, it seems cleaner, in my opinion, to have that matching what the levy is. Or more closely matching without making a significant jump towards the So that's just my opinion.
I don't have any issue with either way.
Cause bonding is market dependent. Right? You're selling debt basically, and whatever the interest rates are.
Yep.
And so if there's a significant event that impacts economics,
It could
can
stop,
impact-
it could stop you from doing that, because
right,
it wouldn't be worth
and
it.
it can
But
impact
we
your
might have been
rates.
planning on potentially doing that, or having that in our
Correct.
Whereas the
budget.
levy's a solid.
Right.
Either way, the dollar amount in that year to the homeowner is no different, one way or another.
Correct.
So who, like, I know you do a lot of work with the, like calculations and figuring all of that out, but like, is that something that, like, someone could advise, like, what that looks like, or what's best, as I feel like we're just talking in conversation right now,
Yeah.
but we're also just throwing out like, oh, maybe a nickel, and like, I feel like we're just guessing, like playing the guessing.
Well,
It's not what a levy is.
Yeah, that's true.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
cause you don't
Yeah.
know what your property tax values are gonna do and all sorts of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Right. So it's, they're two different vehicles, they're both gonna get us to the same place. When you increase your tax rate, then it should be on there, I don't wanna say forever, but moving forward. Whereas when you sell bonds, that tax rate is there just until the bonds are paid. Okay, so right now, we have about 40 cents in tax rate to repay bonds. And if we don't do anything, if we just keep writing checks and don't have any new bonds, in 2028, that 40 cents goes to zero, and our tax rate drops 40 cents. Okay. And so, it's a positive thing to keep that tax rate up through that 40 cents. The conversation is, do we want to, as we look at over the next, whatever it is, 2, 3, 4 years, tacking on another 20 cents, what vehicle do we want to use? Do be it through the levy process, the bond process, a combination of the two, that's really the conversation.
Which I totally get, that that's the conversation. I was more asking like, is this all on your plate to decide, or like, do we get like financials, like somebody who like who knows, studies that, or knows like a little bit of like, and again, I trust that you know numbers and do a lot of calculations too, so I was just curious how you make that decision, or do you just,
Yeah, and so it's a lot of math,
yeah.
right? And so part of it comes back to the fact that continuing to have that bond in place continues to keep our tax rate up. And so that's obviously a positive thing. And so
Would you agree in your opinion though that fundamentally we still need our levy to be more appropriately aligned with the cost that it costs to do business here?
yes,
So we made a jump last year, not jumping at all this year means that if we're eventually gonna try to get closer to that number overall, at some point it's gonna have to do a more significant jump.
correct.
So with the incremental smaller jumps, and not saying that you don't do both, it's just maybe we adjust the levy by a nickel, it doesn't overall impact the bonding power, like we still have the bonding power for the other 35 cents, right?
So our bonding is at 40 cents. And if we were to increase the levy a nickel,
Right.
then our bonding still stays at 40 cents.
Okay.
And so then if we were to
But
adjust.
if we didn't need that full amount, like you talked about, like eventually if we paid it all off and it went down by 40 cents,
Right.
we
right.
could say instead of keep retaining 40 cents on bonding, because our levy went up, we maybe decide that we don't need that full 40 cents in bonding. Right?
Could be.
Like it could be an introverted relation, like,
Could be. And so yeah,
I guess as long as we're talking about every year, how much deficit spending are we gonna have? It doesn't seem like the right way to do business. Like we're saying, okay, well, bonding helps us make up the deficit, which is great, except if for some reason bonding power was changed or there was some major economic fluster or something happened and we weren't able to go sell that debt and retain that revenue, it's just a little bit more, it's a little less guaranteed, I guess,
agreed.
in the long run.
Yep. But we would have plenty of time to be able to then go and say, okay, now we need to shift to.
But the levy's always like 2 years behind, because we would pass it for the tax rate, for the next time they would pass the tax rate, but then that's for the next time that you pay the taxes and then we give the money back,
So it's 6
kind of in the
months.
rear.
So when we pass this year's, in December, we'll pass a levy, that will impact the money that we get next July. It's the tax bills that people get in April and May. Yep. There's a year lag in EAV, so that's probably what you're thinking of. Yeah. And so, no, this is a great conversation, to me. I'm not married to either. I think the important part of the conversation is that we continue that process of.
How much are we paying in interest, paying back the dollar?
Depends with every bond sale.
On this page, let's just say this.
This last one that we did, I think we raised about $3 million. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Ballpark. I think we raised about $3 million, and I think the total cost in interest over the lifetime of the repayment is going to be like $350,000, $400,000.
After giving everybody another seat.
So 5 years, roughly $350,000 to $400,000 in interest. Not yearly, right?
that's the cumulative over the lifetime. Yep.
But that right there is almost like saying, well, that we just.
But, okay, and normally I would completely agree with that, but this last bond that we sold, we've actually had it, the majority of the time that we've had this money, we sold the bond, got the money, put it in the bank, invested it, and our investment rate, we've been having a little not dressage, that's horses. There's a word for it. Where you sell bonds and then you actually make more in interest than what your interest that you're paying is.
Is there something against that?
It's illegal, but there are caveats that make it legal. I'm like not doing anything illegal.
My dad used to do that stuff too.
Well, I just know because I followed along and school districts have had significant repayments due because they have
Yeah, but there are,
done that.
on small issues of under $10 million, really none of the rules apply. And so we only did $3 million. And so as long as you are going to spend the money within 5 years, you're fine. And so I'm about to set up workshops on this because I don't want to go to jail. And
Me
so-
either.
So
Thank
so
you.
so we actually
What did we just pass?
arbitrage. That's the word.
There you go.
Arbitrage. And so we've actually incurred interest on the bonds that we sold in '23, but we actually made money on doing that, which never happens, right? But it's
But there can be significant fluctuations in bond interest rates depending on, I mean, it's very market driven.
Yep.
So if the market goes way up or way down, at the time when we need to tap into the cash and sell that bond, it can go in our favor, or it can, like it did, or it can go the other way.
Yep. I completely agree. Right now we're in a spot where the interest rates are good.
Right.
To be able to sell bonds. And
Let me
it's-
ask you this question.
Yeah.
If we were to go through our next bonding cycle at retaining at that full percentage, is there any reason you wouldn't recommend us making that slight adjustment to the levy by the nickel so that we're at least making the progress towards where we need to be to have adequate funding for functional operation without bonding?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great path too. So if we were to say that, okay, in December, we're gonna add a nickel in and we're gonna go to 385, but then we'll do 285. 285.
285.
That's the referendum drug you're
Right.
talking about.
Yep, nope, 285.
No, we're not talking about any of that. So if we have the conversation to add in a nickel and go to 285, and then if we were to decide in February when we go to sell bonds, that we want to do a nickel there too and go from 40 to 45, I think that's a great path too. And then that still gets us at our 290 that we were talking about.
It just splits it up, the risk up a little bit, and
I think, oh, that's great.
I also think that in the past, in this district's history, there's been times when we've sold bonds for a large influx without like a real clear path on what it's doing, and then it sits there, but we also kind of talk out both sides, because at that point, you have all this money sitting here, but you're like, but we're in a deficit, we have no money, we can't do this, we can't do this, we can't do this, because our revenues and expenditures are like this. And really, if you try to work more on that levy, that number comes more like this,
Yeah.
so it doesn't look like these like shots of big money and then,
Yeah, that's fair.
you know what I mean, like
That's
it
fair.
doesn't, it's,
Yeah, so historically, and I don't mean, for 40 years, but if you go back the last decade, we've done a 2-year cash cycle. This was in place before I got here. This was.
yeah, but
kind
there
of
was there was one when it was a big in. And it makes it a difficult conversation. At the time, it was a conversation when we were getting ready to renew our agreement with our teachers union. And it was a difficult conversation because it's like, well, yeah, but if you look over here, your expenditures and revenues, they're not, you're already upside down. Like, how are you, but over here, there's this large sum of cash, but that's not like a guarantee, because if we can't sell bonds, we can't replace the cash we take out of there. So I feel like the more you try to be honest with your levy matching your cost of business, and then the other stuff being like we're doing, like we've been doing, right? It makes just more sense. I mean, we didn't, if we hadn't had that increase in healthcare expenses this year, next year would have been pretty close to,
This year we've been, yep.
right?
Yep.
Like, we wouldn't be talking about a major deficit of $400,000 in the proposed budget. But if we don't account for that and acknowledge that as a new functional expense to the district, then I feel like we're kind of gambling a little bit with hoping that we can have enough bonding to make up for those expenses.
Yep.
So what's the next steps in whatever direction we decide to go?
Yeah, so again, we'll take next month and we'll have, give it, nobody's trying to fast play any of this, right? We wanna make sure that everybody's on board. And then, in November, we tend to have a tentative levy, which is the tax rate part of it. And we would also, that's kind of timeline-wise, when we would talk about bonding as well. And so, I already have on the November calendar for Kevin Wells to be here from Bernard Securities to make sure that we have any questions answered about that bonding process. He's been here before, you guys know him, he's super smart, very upfront, and so that's kind of what the next steps are.
So to address the question that Sarah asked a little bit ago about like financial advising, clearly like his role is bonding and like that, because they, obviously that's what their company does, right? And
Correct.
they make their money off of that, so that's gonna be their recommendation. But is there like a neutral source? Like I know like our
That's- yeah, that's
auditor
right.
kind of went away, but like is there a neutral source and maybe even tapping in through like IASB or someone that we could have just take a look at the whole thing and be like, well, ultimately if you're trying to path yourself towards 3,
Or maybe who
in
knows.
today's market do this, but next year do that, or here's the risks of doing that.
I can look around and see.
Like who kind of understands it on the school level like you do, but then like also like.
I mean, I could put together a white paper of, here's a half a page on why the levy path is the right path to go. Here's a half a page on why the bonding path is the path to go. Help kind of do pros and cons of that. Would that
Have you
help?
done that, you've done that in the past with like a slideshow on like the pros and cons on different things too.
Yep.
I think that, for me, I think that's, it would be a great
It's very
idea.
educational, for sure.
I guess I'm just sitting here like listening and I'm learning a little bit more, like I already knew some and I understand what you're saying, but I'm hearing your like thoughts on it and I'm hearing like agreements here and like I just don't know
Like a
if
totally
we are
neutral
the,
source,
yeah,
like, kind of coming in, going, this is the path,
right.
this is
This
path
is
A,
the-
this is path B, like, kind of like we do with our projects, right? Like, here's
I
choice
still
A,
like
what
us
am I look like,
obviously
here's choice B.
making our decisions and based on Brad's recommendations for
absolutely.
sure, but just like who helps Brad or who can answer more questions or I guess I don't have.
I guess because there's such a significant difference between neighboring districts as far as not only some of them that get more money than we do from the state, but in addition have a much higher levy than we do.
Right.
Just understanding maybe like, are we still on the best path for us?
Yeah.
What should be our 5-year goal so that there isn't a large jump? Like, what happens if our bonding power is impacted by a negative shift in the market next year and we didn't adjust the levy this year? Like, what would that look like for next year? I
Exactly.
guess those
Yes.
kind of like, what if forecasts? Would it be bad information if there's somebody that we
No
can tap
such thing.
into?
Yeah, I will, I'll definitely, and again, that's why we're having the conversation
Right.
now.
Right,
Yeah.
no, I love it.
I think it's good
It's very
conversation.
healthy to have.
I'd like that, and I've said, and when I worked there, but like I never understood why LaSalle's was so much higher than ours. You know what I mean?
So, LaSalle is one of our kind of comparables, with respect to demographics, very similar. compared to a lot of our other neighbors. And so their tax rate is, is 3.25, whereas ours is still in the high twos. And they get, from the state, they get more than $3 million more than we do from the state. So, just kind of more information on why it's super important that we make sure that we address that total tax rate.
Right.
And make sure that we have, the funds that we need to support our kids.
And I think also it's very, very important for us to be transparent with our community about like 5 years or 7 years or what, like, if the cost is gonna keep going up incrementally, we're gonna have to avoid there not being, like, to be able to brag that we had a flat tax levy 2 years in a row, and then oops, now we have to hurry up and like drop a huge one on to make up for it. Like, I hate, cause you see that too in communities where boards aren't really great at like forecasting ahead. They're more like, oh, look what we did right now, versus we're setting ourselves up for a path to be sustainable long-term without any significant shifts in a single year. I think is really important.
I think we are, for the most part, a lot of times, talking future, looking at the future, so I've always been impressed with that.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's
for
what,
sure.
that's what this is over here, out through FY 30, which is pretty significant.
Is that your crystal ball?
That's my crystal ball. And so it just kind of shows that as long as we continue on and our move towards a $3 tax rate and just this every other year bonding cycle, this is kind of what that kind of fund balance path looks like.
What's the big drop in the 10 to 7?
So again, that's because you sell, just what you were talking about, you sell bonds 1 year. And this model is the structural debt not being checked. The increase that we had continuing to escalate. And so this is kind of, as I crystal ball things, kind of worst case scenario.
Okay.
Right? And so it's just kind of an exercise to show that kind of the path we're on, even in kind of a worst case scenario, still really kind of looks sustainable long term with the conversations that we're having now.
So is this where we would actually be at 3?
That's where we would actually be at June 30th of 2021.
Because of the bond sale.
Yep.
Has there been any more conversation amongst your peers about the 1% sales tax?
Yes, and it's not going to be on the spring ballot. Which, LaSalle County, the number that I was told at our last meeting is that 70% of the sales tax in LaSalle County is actually paid by people who don't live in LaSalle County.
Yeah, well, Utica.
That is, so even if a school board were to say, yeah, we're gonna endorse the 1% sales tax, but we're gonna rebate 30% of it to our taxpayers because we know that 30% of this money came from you. And then you put the other 70% in your pocket and go to create facility things with it. I don't understand why anybody would support this in a county where the majority of your sales tax comes from.
So
We
what
don't
was
live here.
what was the, yeah.
Just a variety of reasons. And again, it's like this, there are, whatever the number is, 27 school districts in LaSalle County, and everybody has a conversation like this. And everybody's conversations are different, they have different variables.
So was it the, you mentioned previously, the big county,
Cause you have to have a percentage of
like,
kids.
like Ottawa Public and.
A majority of students.
And LP, those districts weren't not in support of it, any sense?
I think the easiest way to say it is, in order to get it on the ballot in the first place, you have to have districts representing the majority of students, so 51% of the total students in the county. And that's not gonna be the case. There won't be enough boards to support that. So.
So
I
what's the
think it's-
conversation, is that conversation continuing?
Yes, I think the conversation is, I think there's at least a fair likelihood that instead of March 25, or I guess it's April 25 when the election is, that it will be on the ballot April 26th. I'm cautiously optimistic that's the case. And I think that we would get in the neighborhood of $900,000 a year projected, if that were to pass. And it has to be spent on facilities.
Good thing we have plenty of facility needs,
Fewer than we used to.
fewer than we used to.
And speaking of which, after we kind of wrap up here, we still have our trip up to Northbrook to take a look at some of the updates after the meeting, if anybody
See Paula's
is
bleachers?
interested.
Yeah.
Not only bleachers, but the new mats got put up today.
Oh, yay.
They might be as awesome as the bleachers.
Very cool. Alright, so nothing for right now, but you're gonna potentially look at some maybe options for some other sources to kind of give us a look at what we've got too.
You bet.
Okay.
And then I got an email about the amendment for the truth in taxation, and I didn't fully understand what all that meant. Do you know, or did you see that?
I don't know what you're
There
talking
was
about.
like, it was I got an amendment to notice requirements in Illinois truth in taxation law, what you need to know, and it's just like changes on like notification.
Yep,
Okay.
yep, that's a December thing.
Okay.
So truth in taxation is something that's done in conjunction with the levy.
Right, it's just they made like some changes that we have to know about, and I didn't fully understand the changes.
We got it,
Okay.
for sure.
Okay, so then we need to revisit our new 8.4. And this is accepting the tentative budget as presented,
Yep, the final budget as presented. You bet.
but because we haven't changed out. The assumptions are staying the same, it's just a matter of which vehicle we're utilizing for the potential
So the assumptions in the budget have no tax increase. So I'm gonna kind of talk out of both sides of my mouth, because earlier I said that I don't underestimate revenues in my budget, but in this case I actually did. And so the bond sale is based on, because we need to sell bonds because we have the facility projects coming up. The bond sale is based on no tax increase, and the levy doesn't impact this budget. And so this budget, again, is based on no tax increase affiliated with bond sales. And so if we decide to go 5 or 10 cents in conjunction with the bond sales, then the revenue would actually be greater.
Then we would just file
An amended budget. Yep.
I was thinking that too.
There's no other questions, could we have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the FY 25 budget as presented.
Espinoza?
Yes.
Schrader?
Yes.
Haas? Landers?
Yes.
Rapp?
Yes.
Coombs?
Yes. Okay, and we have a motion to adjourn at 7:59, please. Second,
I'll second.
all in favor? Opposed? Alright, thank you.
Make sure you grab a wrap.
I need everybody's signature though.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of them.
Yeah, lots of signatures.